The San Jose Sharks have parted ways with Director of Scouting Doug Wilson Jr. What are my thoughts? We are going to get to that. This is Teal Town Live. But of course, if you want to be part of the show, be sure to follow us on all the social media. Check us out on tealtownusa.com. Subscribe, hit the bell, all that wonderful stuff. Let's get down to business. It is myself, Ian Blogs Hockey, from Teal Town USA, here to talk about Doug Wilson Jr. stepping down or parting ways with the Sharks. I don't know how this exactly went down. As the director of scouting for the San Jose Sharks, obviously there's a lot of pretty split reaction to this. I think there's a lot of people who like the move because they like the idea of basically all the old stuff being torn down and gutted, and Mike Greer building a new, basically a new front office from scratch. Some people are concerned because they have liked the shift in drafting under Doug Wilson Jr. Obviously, I think here, look at the one thing that we have to say about Doug Wilson Jr. so far is we've only really gotten like the earliest evidence of what he's done as director of scouting based on how, based on the cycle of turning around from draft to pro, right? So let's talk about that for a second. Your cycle from draft to pro is obviously, look at your players are going to be, depending on where they're playing. Here's your cycle. You go to the draft, you draft your players, obviously rounds 1 through 7. Now, your earliest draft picks are probably going to make it to the NHL the quickest under most circumstances. Unless they're like a super top tier prospect, they could take as much as 2 years to get to the NHL minimum. That's saying they're playing major junior, right? Major junior, they either have to play in the NHL, so major junior obviously being the OHL, the Ontario Hockey League, the Western Hockey League, and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Those guys, they can either play in the NHL or they can play on their club team until they are 20 years old. Guys in college might stay in college longer. College, if you stay in college for your full term, we're talking a 4-year turnaround, right? If they stay there the whole time. Now, most college players don't play their whole 4 years in college, so you can sometimes get them sooner. And then Europe's a magical place where you can kind of pull them whenever you want, but that they don't always, it's sometimes guys don't always make the jump as quickly as you would like. So taking all of that into consideration, I think you want to say that, like, obviously we're just seeing the earliest results of Doug Wilson Jr.'s time as director of scouting, running the draft board. We're just starting to see that now. I think this year, with guys with the 2020 draft class coming into the pro ranks, obviously a lot of them are going to start on the Barracuda. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more data this year that is going to give us a better understanding of what Doug Wilson Jr. has done for this team so far. I think I understand people being like, well, everything sucks, and I understand that. And then I understand, like, and there's some people that are just like, oh, well, his team, this is still awful. Like, where are these players that he's drafted? Well, they haven't turned pro yet, right? So I've had definitely conversations about that on the Twitter machine. Again, I like seeing you guys all in the chat. It's nice to see you guys all here. I don't think this is going to be a super long show. I don't like doing these solo shows. These are incredibly uncomfortable. I give JD all the credit in the world for spitting out like a lot of solo content now that Kyle's gone, like, every day, because solo content is difficult. But I am going to try and incorporate you guys in the chat, and we're going to try and make this as entertaining as possible. I'm going to try not to talk in circles, and we'll see what we come up with here. So just hitting up some comments in the chat here. Let's see what we've got. Ramon Garcia basically saying, based on the comments on Twitter and Reddit, I see half and half. Yeah, I've seen a lot of half and half too. I think a lot of people are concerned. I think rightfully so concerned. And I see a lot of other people that are, cracking the champagne, and I can get that too. I'm not there. I don't think. I'm more I would put myself more on the concern side of things. But yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a polarizing topic. Zach Croft in the chat, how you doing, Zach? Maybe Mike Rierga's Patrick Marleau spot. Can we stop? Okay, Zach, I love you, and I love all of you guys watching, listening. Guys, Patrick Marleau probably, and again, I don't know Patrick Marleau from a hole in the ground, but Patrick Marleau to me seems like a guy who's really, really happy being a family guy. I don't think he's ready to jump back into the game yet. A lot of guys that would jump back, like when they get out of the game, they try to get back in the game as quickly as possible. I don't think Marleau's going to be that guy, right? But I mean, hey, we'll see what happens. Satan in the chat, if Burke is not gone as well, we're fucked. Yeah. Look I think that's the one thing that I will say about Mike Grier taking over, and if Doug Wilson's leaving, Doug Wilson Jr. obviously leaving. Yeah, I mean, this gives an opportunity to Mike Grier to remake the entire scouting department in his vision. And I hope that doesn't include Tim Burke. Because if we go back to Tim Burke running these drafts, man, I don't know. I'm going to be pretty apocalyptic about that. I just, it is what it is, man. I don't know. I don't like that either. But yeah, like I would like to see if this is a situation where, you know, we're moving on and bringing new faces in and whatever, then I want to see that, you know, across the board a little bit there too. I agree. Yeah, obviously, look, change is expected. I look at when we got a new Doug Wilson, when we got a new general manager for the first time in like 20 years. I mean, obviously there was going to be change. I didn't think we would see this kind of change this quickly. So there you go, right? Yeah, Tony Couture in the chat here. You know, draft works like this. First year, about 7% of drafted players play in the NHL. Second year, about 15. Third year, 22. Fourth year, 25. And then, yeah, you get 40%, right? And then he continues and says, draft prospects are one resource. Undrafted players, waivers are needed to bring in more talent. Scouts have to work with a 5-year development project, so nobody can predict the end in many cases. And I agree with that. And I would like, you know, and I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, right? Like, there's a lot of comments about, like, there's a lot of people making definitive comments on Doug Wilson's tenure as the director of scouting, and I'm not disagreeing with people. I'm not saying, like, I'm just saying I don't have the data yet to make a conclusive final say on Doug Wilson's reign as the director of scouting. Like, I feel like I don't have that information yet. Obviously, I think there was an obvious shift when he took over as general manager, like, as not a general manager, but as director of scouting. I think there was a definite shift there, and I think we all kind of saw that. But was that a shift for the better? We don't know yet. So I just feel like if you're going to come at me on Twitter and trying to make me make like definitive comments on Doug Wilson Jr. as far as like whether it's good or not, I can't give you one because I don't have the answer. The data is just starting to come in and we won't know, you know, like we've just gotten the earliest of earliest data here on Doug Wilson Jr. So, you know, did we go over, just another Randy G, did we go over if Doug Wilson Jr. had control of this draft or not? Oh, okay, so that's another one that's obviously we're going to have a lot of conversations about that, and I think there's a lot of speculation. My opinion is that I don't believe that Mike Grier came in, you know, a couple of nights before the draft with a case of Red Bull, sat down the scouting staff and said, guys, I don't care what you have, we're starting over, and we're going to do the work right now. I think Doug Wilson Jr., I think even the best general managers have not great drafts. And look at, again, was this a not great draft? We won't know. We won't know for a while. Does it super excite me as a draft as much as previous drafts under Doug Wilson Jr. have impressed me? No, it doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies, but again, I'm not saying it's a bad draft class because we don't know yet. We won't know that for a few years, right? Like, and that's the one thing I think that's difficult in this era of, we can sit down on YouTube and we can talk immediately about anything that happens and have a big conversation, is we want all the answers right now. And I don't have them. Like, I have my opinion and some people have their opinions, and that's cool, man. Like, again, if your opinion is like, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to the San Jose Sharks, man, you do you. Like, I'm not here to tell you otherwise. I'm not trying to bend you to my will. Like, if it's a conversation for sure. Let's see what else we got in the chat going on. Yeah, Dave Victoria saying, I'd say Doug Wilson Jr.'s firing closes the book on the last era of management. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for entering a new era of hockey. Yeah, look it. I have been a pretty pro Doug Wilson Jr. guy, but also I have no control over anything that's going on in San Jose right now. I don't have the, I don't have any inside information. I've always been pretty honest, right? Like, there are people in our little conglomerate of people at tealtownusa that talk to people in management and, have inroads to some of the people on this team. I am not one of them. I don't want that. I like being a guy that comes in and gets to talk all kinds of mad shit and never have to look anyone in the eye after for doing it. Like, I just think that's a role that I do very well. So I'm not, like, I have no inside information here. I'm just giving you my opinions based on a guy who's watched hockey his entire life, right? Luke Johnson asking, I wonder what point Junior was told he wasn't coming back. It would be strange if it was before the draft. I think here's my thing. I wonder if this was his choice, and let me go into why I think that's a possibility here. I think that obviously, look, if you want to come into a role like director of scouting, you're generally looking to take the next step. And obviously, when Doug Wilson Sr. stepped down as general manager, I have to imagine that Doug Wilson Jr. probably wants to take the next step in his career at some point. Maybe right now wasn't the time that he wanted to do it, but I think he wants to do that at some point. And again, complete speculation here, but let's go down this rabbit hole for a minute. So if you're Doug Wilson Jr. and look at Doug Wilson Jr., for better or worse, there's always going to be a pocket of people that are going to ignore any evidence of what he does, whether it was good or bad. When we look back at Doug Wilson Jr. in 4 years, whether it's amazing or bad, there's going to be a pocket of people who are going, oh yeah, but he was just Doug Wilson's son. That's how he got hired, right? And I wonder if because of his relationship to his father, obviously, I just wonder if he felt that maybe I can't get this job. Like, maybe I will never be able to have this job in San Jose because I'm Doug Wilson's father, like Doug Wilson Sr.'s son. And the Sharks are never going to be able to give me that opportunity because of anything that entails about how fans or everyone feels about Doug Wilson's senior job as general manager, especially near the end, right? Because I think for a long time, a lot of people were a lot more pro Doug Wilson than against. And I got barking dogs. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Oh, shut up. All right, my apologies. Okay, so trying to get back to my train of thought here. So I wonder if Doug Wilson feels like by moving on, one, he can do a couple things, right? By moving on. One, he can have kind of a clean slate where he's hired not because he's Doug Wilson Jr., but because of the work that he's done, right? I think another franchise will probably give him a chance to get hired into a role and probably move up in that organization. So I wonder if this is just like, if he feels like in order to advance his career to maybe get to where he wants to go, as far as his, future development as an executive, I wonder if he just felt that he couldn't reach that ceiling in San Jose, or this was his ceiling in San Jose. Again, I don't know Doug Wilson Jr., so speculation, but I don't think any of that sounds unreasonable, right? Like, I think everyone could probably agree that's plausible. Um, it is what it is here. Um, Let me see if I can get here. Yeah, Teacher Train saying, obviously, no more ties to players, which is good. The only concern is that we wait until the last minute to add our coach and our staff and select under pressure. The Sharks have lots of time. Again, there's it's summer. Like, the Sharks have a lot of time to get all those ducks in a row. So I'm not super concerned about who the coach is right now. But yeah, obviously it's something that they do have to look. And having a front office that is not loyal to certain players, I think that's definitely a positive thing. But at the same time, we say that, Marc-Edouard Vlasic was at the draft table, so I don't know. We'll see. Burge saying, it seems so weird from my perspective that the Sharks are not making a full rebuild and they're just parting ways so quickly with Doug Wilson Jr. Good job on doing solely, and yeah, thanks, bud. Yeah, look at again. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next for Doug Wilson Jr. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens for the Sharks, man. Like, this summer has gotten to be a lot more interesting a summer than I think we've ever had in San Jose, especially like as long as we've been doing this show. I don't remember a summer nearly as interesting as this one, right? And this, man, it's just getting started. So, like, it's definitely a buckle up thing, right? Shoeshine, I'd like to see Doug Wilson Jr. outside of being the boss's son. Yeah, agreed, right? I just don't like the timing, and not qualifying Dahlin is a massive head scratcher too. Yes, let's talk about Jonathan Dahlin. So Jonathan Dahlin is not going to get a qualifying offer, which to me is kind of annoying, right? Like, Doug Wilson, like Dahlin, I like Jonathan Dahlin. I really do. And I think not qualifying him, like, if you're not going to keep him, like, I still think someone would probably trade for him. Now, I want to see his qualifying offer. Because I want to see what his QO should come in as. Let me just quickly look up Mr. Jonathan Dahlin here. Yes, and there's been, flat cap has been incredibly interesting because a lot of guys that you would expect to get qualified are not getting qualified qualifying offers. Now, Jonathan Dahlin, what's his QO? Like, his QO is nothing. I don't get it. I don't get it. His QO is nothing, so I don't know what they're doing. Yeah, the Jonathan Dahlin thing's a head scratcher. I guess if you don't qualify him, you could let him go and then you could re-sign him for less money. But again, like, they obviously just didn't like what they saw from Jonathan Dahlin, and that to me is a little bit perplexing, based on other moves they made. Now, again, we'll see what they do in free agency, which I don't think is going to be a whole lot, but it's, yeah, the arbitration eligibility is definitely a big thing. Bob Jackson in the chat bringing that up. Bringing up the arbitration thing. Yeah, he could probably go to arbitration. He could probably win a decent reward. And by not qualifying him, you basically take away his arbitration rights because you make him an unrestricted free agent. I just think that Jonathan Dahlin's a guy who is going to sign for like league minimum and some other team that's going to be cap crunched and competitive, and it's going to not be pretty. And I think a lot of people that are screaming now about Jonathan Dahlin being not good are going to be in the chat later this year going, oh my God, why did the Sharks let Jonathan Dahlin go? So, yeah. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, and they do have a lot of RFAs to sign too, right? Obviously, they do have to sign some RFAs. They got to get some contracts figured out. So, yeah. So they could look at, is the Jonathan Dahlin era in San Jose over? I don't know if Jonathan Dahlin's good enough to define it as an era, but he could come back. He could come back for less money than he could score in arbitration. I can definitely understand the arbitration angle. That's a really good one. So I'm glad that we have the chat here keeping me honest. Yeah, we'll see what happens, man. We will see. It's going to be very, very interesting. Obviously, the Sharks also Shank when Doug Wilson Jr. is like the Doug Wilson Jr. came out and like Shank immediately came out and said, "Oh, by the way, they're going to qualify Noah Gadjevich." So Noah Gadjevich is going to return, which it's fine. Look, I don't have my issue with Noah Gadjevich was never Noah Gadjevich. My problem is I think when you look at constructing a lineup, I think there's guys that you don't need plenty of in the lineup. And I don't hate Gadjevich as a player individually. I like Jeffrey Viel. I just don't know if you need all of them in the lineup at once. That's always been my gripe there. Like, I don't dislike Noah Gadjevich. It is what it is. Qualifying Noah Gregor. Yeah, that's an interesting one, to walk away from a guy like Dahlin and then keep Gregor. It's interesting, right? Because we're seeing like a whole new, we're seeing fresh eyes on the team from a new general manager. So it's going to be interesting to see what they see in certain players and how they part ways. It's really early on. It's going to be interesting too. Obviously, look at Mario Ferraro needs to get a new deal. And he's going to make some change. I don't think he's going to make a lot of money, but I think he's going to definitely get a decent contract. You also have to sign Timo Meier at some point to an extension, if that's indeed the plan, right? So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, like I like Noah Gregor too. Like, I don't dislike Noah Gregor. I just think that the Sharks had a lot of guys who just don't finish at the NHL level. I think that's fair to say. Like, they have too many guys that just couldn't finish at the NHL level. Like, I think I like Noah Gregor as a player, but they need more guys that can put the puck in the net. And at least Dahlin, before he was injured, did that pretty regularly and at a pretty decent clip. We haven't seen that from Noah Gregor yet. So it's going to be interesting. How much would Sonny Milano cost? I think someone would probably jump on Sonny. Sonny Milano's another guy who I think is not going to get a QO and is going to sign on with a team and then is going to be pretty good wherever he goes, right? But I don't have enough of the Duck stuff in front of me right now to make that to give a deep dive on what the Ducks are doing. Yeah. So I mean, Kevin Labanc can score goals. I just don't think he scores them at a clip that makes him worth his contract. But yeah, I think we've pretty much kind of summed all this information up, though we've been on for about 20 minutes. So I feel like that's probably a good place to cut this out. I don't know. Anyway, so again, if you missed it, Doug Wilson Jr., San Jose Sharks parting ways. Obviously, so another vacancy in the front office that the Sharks need to fill, and it's going to be interesting to see where they do. Again, thanks for everyone for jumping on with me and bearing with me rambling solo. Very difficult, very, very difficult to do, but thanks for all of you who took the time to do it. No qualifying offer to Sawchenko doesn't surprise me. Look, Zachary Sawchenko, if you've been following the show for a long time, Zachary Sawchenko was on an NHL contract because of COVID. He was a guy who was going to sit on the taxi squad for most of the time. And when he was called to look at, he didn't play a lot of hockey over the 2 years because of just being a guy who sat on the taxi squad. And when called upon, Sawchenko came in, was super pro. All the guys in the room liked him. But he was never a future guy. He was a guy that was able to fill a spot on the taxi squad so that guys that they thought more of, which didn't pan out, but guys they thought more of in Alexei Melnichuk, Josef Kozanash, could get the playing time, because those are the guys that they thought might have a future. They just never saw it in Zach Sawchenko. So Zach Sawchenko, I think, got to make NHL money for 2 years, which I think is fantastic for him. And I think, again, a pro. Guys in the room loved him, and that's all you can ask for from a guy put in that situation, which I think is difficult, man. Like, yeah, he's making a lot of money, but he's making a lot of money not to do the thing that he loves the most, and that was play hockey. So I give Zach Sawchenko all the credit in the world, but he was never in the plans as a future guy. That's all. So Sachenko not getting qualified doesn't surprise me. Milosh surprises me a little bit because I think that he was a guy who played over his head based on the injury situation on the Sharks. Like, I think he's probably a really good AHL player and, you know, an absolutely replaceable NHL one if you're playing him on your third pair, in a, you know, in an injury relief role. But I think he had to play higher in the lineup than his skill set would allow. He's a guy that I think the Sharks probably circle back to and sign to an AHL deal for the Barracuda, because I think on the Barracuda he's fine, and I think the Barracuda are going to need some blue liners. So Nick Milosh, again, not my favorite player on the Sharks, obviously, but I think also fair to say that a guy who was thrust into a position that was way over his head. So anyway, yeah. So again, that's it. Thanks again for everyone for coming along for the ride. We're going to do a TTGs pretty soon. I just got to sit down with the guys and figure out schedules, because adult schedules are difficult. But we are going to do a Teal Tinted Glasses soon, and we got a ton to talk about for that. So if you're looking for something more long form, stay tuned for that, because that's coming. I promise I will give you guys all the information as soon as I have it. And once again, if you want to follow us or anything, if you liked what you saw here, even if it's just me rambling and losing my voice, hit the bell, hit the subscribe button. We do all kinds of Sharks content. So if this is your bag, definitely hit the subscribe, hit the bell. And if you want to follow up, you can follow me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter, Tealtown USA, Twitter, Instagram, wherever your social media is. I'm sure Tealtown has an account there. Yeah, and